Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I see a lot of smiling faces and naturally a lot of people that do good work in Toledo's neighborhoods. And so I'm happy to see you all. I'm glad that you're here in the rain. It was supposed to be sunshiny and gorgeous today, but alas, I was ignored yet again by the weather gods. I want to welcome you to our event to kick off the 2021 Toledo survey. We're going to get into the weeds. We're going to talk about the details of the report. I just want to acknowledge the land bank staff that's sitting in front of us. And I'm so proud to be a part of the land bank. I think that it's really visionary, and when you distill down the message of the land bank, it's about hope and it's about the future. We are holding out hope that it's going to be a brighter day today and even brighter tomorrow. So, and in my mind, the purpose of the Toledo survey, I have been to probably no less than 5 presentations where somebody has rolled out a very fancy data-driven assessment of Toledo, of its neighborhoods, of its strategy, and that sort of thing. And all of those things are important, but it is very important for the work that we all do in the neighborhoods to be rooted in the specifics of a neighborhood. To think about, how many trees line the streets, for example. To think about how many houses with a little bit of an investment can make a difference in a community. And all of us have strengths and weaknesses. Some of us know neighborhoods block by block, house by house, others don't. And this survey and the details in the survey will provide the detail that we need about how we spend the resources, the limited resources that we have in this community. And so I just think it's very strategic. It's very forward looking. The way it's positioned allows us the opportunity to interface with other data instruments that are being used by others in the community. So this is not the end all be all, but it is an important fold in as we start to really make data-driven decisions in our community. So I'm Lindsay Webb. I'm the Lucas County Treasurer. I don't even think I said that. And I am the chair of the land bank and honored to be that in that role, serving our community and working with this really smart, capable group of people in front of you. And the mayor is making me nervous simply by sitting in front of me. I just, anyways, I'm going to bring up Stephanie. Stephanie is going to get into the details of the survey and talk about how we got here. One thing that she'll mention is that when the mayor was still the treasurer of the county, he and the team put together a group of volunteers who did this work. And I won't get into the weeds of like best practices and what we learned and all of that sort of stuff, but this time, because we learned those lessons, and that's another thing that I love about the land bank is we are willing to do what folks in the safety forces refer to as a hot wash. So we came back and we looked at it, we said, what worked, what didn't, let's do it again. And they did it even better this time. So the data is better, it's more specific, and it's more actually helpful for the work that we're doing. So Stephanie's gonna come up and dig into that. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening. And mostly, honestly, thank you for caring about Toledo and her neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Webb, and like she said, everyone for being here. My name is Stephanie Shackelford, and I am the Senior Vice President for Projects and Planning at the Land Bank. So I'll keep my section pretty brief. It's going to be more about the process, and I know we're all anxious to see about the actual results. So I'll try to be quick here, but I just wanted to touch on the process we undertook and the work that went into making this whole project possible. Like Lindsay said, it's no small feat to plan and execute a citywide condition survey of every parcel, and we have done it now twice. So that is really important to note. The first survey was completed in 2015, and prior to that, there was really no current or comprehensive data on the condition of every property in our neighborhood. Without that type of data, it's really difficult to make strategic, informed decisions on how we do allocate those resources and strengthen our community. The results of the 2015 survey provided key information that showed us that while our neighborhoods were probably stronger than some might have thought, there really was a lot of blight and property maintenance challenges that existed. I've personally been with the land bank since early 2016, so the whole implementation of the 2015 survey predates my time here. But I can attest to how useful the data was from day one of my showing up in 2016 and really continued to be in the years that followed that publication. It allowed the land bank to announce our big goal a few years ago of 1,500 properties being demolished or renovated in 1,500 days. But with such reliable information from that 2015 survey, we were able to efficiently identify those properties, and we well exceeded that goal. We actually did 2,400 demolitions or renovations in that same 1,500 day period. And really without that data, I don't know that we would have been able to do that. So as everyone knows, conditions on the ground changed though, and that data became stale. So in 2020, the staff of the land bank knew it was really time to try to refresh and also try to make it better, more refined, based on lessons we learned from that 2015 effort. So this lovely group of people here. Like Lindsay said, in 2015, the survey data was collected using a mix of volunteers and also some paid canvassers. But one of the major changes we decided to do this time was to hire, streamline the process to hire a temporary staff that would work full-time as neighborhood surveyors. We felt that providing rigorous training, comprehensive training in one swoop with the same group of people who then would be working on solely this project, that we could ensure the questions would be answered more consistently and try to be as objective as possible because we're all working from the same set of definitions. We were fortunate enough to find 10 dedicated, hardworking individuals to bring on board for this project. And I'm going to embarrass 3 of them because they're sitting right here, Devonna, Mike, and Julia. Raise your hands and wave. Okay. So yeah, they do deserve applause. These 3 were part of the group of 10 that did that. And I have to say, as the person who got to interact with them on a daily and a lot of times, let's be honest, hourly basis during those days, it was just evident how passionate this group was about gathering the data and doing their best to get it right, knowing that this information was going to be used for the betterment of our neighborhoods. So due to their tenacity, the survey data was collected in just a matter of a few months, where in our 2015 effort, it took 9 months to do. So they cut that into a fraction of the time. I will say those months happened to be the hottest, probably most humid days of 2021, but our surveyors really did show up every day with a purpose, and we can't thank them enough for their hard work. Not only did they capture the data that David's about to go over, but it was also a pleasure to see the life that they found that make our neighborhoods what they are. Beautiful gardens, curious pets, artistic murals, and everything in between. They would send us photos throughout those days, and it really made the experience more fun, and we got to get a true glimpse of what's happening on the unique streets of our city. So that was priceless, I think. I'm also happy to say that at the end of the survey project, the land bank had 2 openings on our staff, and we were excited that Julia Hernandez and Devonna Pierce wanted to stick around with us and transition from surveyors to full-time permanent staff members. So they definitely deserve the recognition all of the folks in this photo do. So thank you guys for your effort. The 2021 survey also would not have been successful without the technology that we used through our partnership with Regrid. Regrid's a technology firm that's based in Detroit, and they have engineered a mobile app that helps you complete surveys in the field. So our land bank team internally constructed a series of questions that tried to capture the most basic information about a parcel. Is there a structure there? If so, what type of structure is it? Then let's look at the condition of that structure. Based on feedback from our partners at the city, we also included questions about the presence of street trees and the condition of sidewalks in this survey that we weren't able to capture in the 2015. So not only is it more refined data, there is more data here. The data was able to be collected just by having a smartphone in the field, using an app on that, which we could then turn into viewing that in map form on our desktop interface and spreadsheets. And I think that in the office, we agree that's where the real fun begins, is once all of it's collected, we start to analyze it. We start to put it on maps. We start to visualize it. Some of that obviously we're going to share with you today, but that really gets us a real sense of the condition of Toledo's neighborhoods. So I will say this has been a labor of love for almost 2 years, from planning early on in the pandemic of 2020 to now. And we're very, very excited to share the survey's findings with you all. So to do that, I'm going to bring up David Mann, who is the Land Bank's president and CEO. David.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. It's great to have you all here. I have to start with recognizing Stephanie because she is an exceptional colleague and she did a great job recognizing all the people that worked really hard on this. But Stephanie, along with our former colleague, Ann Wistow, who left us and joined actually the Wayne County Land Bank in Detroit a couple months ago, they made this 2021 Toledo survey a reality. So if they hadn't put all the effort into this, we wouldn't be here tonight, and they deserve our thanks and our appreciation. I also want to recognize our board of directors, our land bank team, and our neighborhood surveyors for all the work on the project. And finally, let me thank you all for being here. I think looking around, there's probably a lot of people that wanted to be here. There's a lot of things happening tonight. So it's extra special to us that you made the time to come and hear this presentation, because this is going to get a little nerdy. This is going to get a little in the weeds, but that's the kind of thing that we do at the land bank. And it's the kind of thing that I think you all obviously are happy to also participate in. Finally, briefly, let me thank the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library for hosting us. I don't know that the library knows this, but there's such a resource in the community that they hosted the surveyors all throughout the city all summer while they hunted for maybe a quick break or free Wi-Fi to make sure that the app was loading the data correctly, all the things that work. So the library is hosting us now, but they were really important last summer when we were working through this. So with all that said, let's move on then to the main event and the information that we found. The guiding philosophy that we undertook with this project is what's on the screen. What gets measured gets dealt with. Measuring 120,000 properties in the city of Toledo is not the easiest task in the world. Stephanie gave you a small taste of the many decisions that need to be made in order to pull off something of this scale, but we have done it, and we've done it twice now. And I think twice matters in part because when you do it the first time, you absolutely learn a lot. But when you do it the second time, you can compare from the first time. You can see the trends, you can see what has changed, what are opportunities that maybe haven't yet been tackled, and that's really exciting. So as we unpack through the next slides, I'd ask you all to keep your focus on what we all can do together to make Toledo better, to make the lives of the people who live here better, because that's the reason to understand this information. Let's start with the whole city, or the all 119,284 parcels to be exact. That's the last time I'm going to do that. I'm going to round up, and you're just going to have to accept that reality. Like most places in the world, Toledo is a city that is mostly built on, mostly improved. Over 80% of all the parcels in the city have something on them, some kind of building or improvement. But 1 out of 5 parcels right now is some kind of vacant lot. In 2015, when we did this survey, that number was closer to 1 out of 8. So I think it's fair to say that we do have more vacant land in this community than we did just a few years ago. Do we have dramatically more vacant land? I don't know that that's true. One of the things that we did a little better in this survey is count vacant land a little bit more accurately. So vacant land for us isn't just that classic residential vacant lot, but also parks and open spaces, business properties, parking lots even, that don't have any kind of improvement on them. And so that might help to make the change not as dramatic as it seems. One more factor, and this one you'd have to really dig into the weeds with us, but in Toledo, there are about 2,000 total parcels fewer than there were in 2015, but the exact same land mass. And I think one of the reasons for that is that there have been a lot of structure demolitions in this community over the course of that 6 years. And often we are contributing to this, when a building is taken down, but the next door neighbor is interested in adding that land to their property, we will transfer it to them as a side lot. But we'll also combine that vacant lot with their own parcel. And that vacant lot that used to be its own thing sort of goes away. And so that's in part why I think we see fewer parcels. It's not that we have fewer things to some degree in this community, it's that we are better right-sizing a community. So Toledo is not what it used to be, it's what it's becoming and what it will be as we go forward. This is a map of that information. Toledo is a big landmass. This is 84 square miles of individual properties. That's all 119,000 or so on there. The map that you're looking at in the blue shows residential properties. In the red shows commercial, industrial, institutional properties. And then in the yellow shows vacant lots. Again, either real small vacant lots, maybe in a neighborhood, versus entire swaths of green space and parks that we see running throughout our community. When you look at this map, I think the first thing that you can see is that Toledo is mostly a city of neighborhoods, a city of residential neighborhoods, because there's more blue on here than really anything else. But we have many green space and commercial arteries that sort of feed and integrate with those residential neighborhoods and sort of connect the city to everything else. So I'm not sure if you've seen a map like that, but that's what Toledo essentially is as of today. When we look at vacant land and ask what the survey says about it, what we find first is that most of the vacant lots in Toledo are in a residential neighborhood, about 14,000 or so of that total. Many, like I said, probably used to have a structure on them. Now that structure is gone. When you break out that 14,000, about 4,000 of them, so not half, a little bit less than half, are publicly owned. That means that if there's 4,000 publicly owned vacant lots, there's 10,000 privately owned vacant lots in residential neighborhoods. And that is a lot of land when we think about it, when you aggregate it together. Vacant lots, like I said, only make up about 20% of all the parcels that we surveyed and counted, but it's over a quarter of the entire land mass of the city. That is a total of about 13,500 acres. So that's a lot of land. Parks, forests, natural spaces, you can see that they're part of what we think about as vacant land on this. There aren't a dramatic quantity of parcels when we talk about that category, but it's actually a lot of land mass. I'm not sure that that would be surprising to people. About 5,000 total acres in the city of Toledo is dedicated to parks, natural or open space. When you look at other cities like ours, when you look at other places that are doing well, amazingly, 5,000 acres is actually on the low end of dedicated green space. And I know that there's partners throughout the community that are working to improve that and to better that, but we would be stronger as a community if we probably had even more open and natural space dedicated for that purpose. That's something that we should all be thinking about as we go forward. When our surveyors found a vacant lot, we trained them to determine if in that moment the lot looked abandoned or not. Abandoned is not some kind of real specialized decision. I think we all could guess what we mean by abandoned. Were there abandoned vehicles on the lot, overgrown grass, tires, debris, things that suggested that no one seemed to be taking care of that property or cared much about it. And I think it's a reality in our community, unfortunately for many, that people that live in neighborhoods with lots of abandoned land, they have had to become experts on what abandoned lots look like because they have to look out their window and see them on a regular basis. We should take heart on the one hand that when we surveyed all 14,000 or so of those residential lots, most of them did not look abandoned. And that's good. But 2,000 did. And 2,000 is a lot. 2,000 is more than we should want to tolerate as a community in terms of just basic maintenance and stability for our places. So that is something that you'll hear, I think, a lot from this. We have two stories that we're going to keep going back and forth on. On the one hand, things are maybe not as bad as people might think they are. And on the other hand, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of opportunities to do better. I don't know that this room needed to know the difference between an abandoned vacant lot and a vacant lot that might be better improved, but this is still a nice dramatic contrast. I do want you to ask yourself, which of those lots that you're looking at would tell children who were walking by that they mattered to the community? Which of the lots would give someone, as Treasurer Webb said, hope after they might have gone through some tough times? Which of the lots would you want to live next to? And I guess my guess is we probably all know the answer to that, and we think about it. Here's the interesting fact. It's true that when you look at the lot on the left, it's much more wild. It has things that the lot on the right doesn't have. It has native plantings. Maybe they weren't intentionally put there, but they're coming through. It has trees on it. Again, maybe not well planned necessarily, but they're there. It's important that when we're thinking about our community and we're building out that we have to be intentional about these kinds of plans. The lot on the right is an intentional effort to take something that used to have a house on it and make it into a space that people in the neighborhood can use, that people feel like they are welcome to, that when you drive by, you feel like, okay, I can understand how this neighborhood was put together at one point because we've helped it together. But that lot also doesn't have any trees on it right now. Doesn't have anything that looks maybe very native. I do think one of the points that we have found in our work at the Land Bank is that before we can talk with folks in the community about being more embracing of land in its natural environment, we have to do a little bit better about making those properties friendly first to the neighborhood. We can't just take a dramatic leap over to the wild without having a sense that we've told people that their place matters first. So that's why those 2,000 abandoned vacant lots deserve attention, because that minimum maintenance is the starting point by which we build the future of what our neighborhoods look like. Those lots, the ones that no one really does want, are opportunities. They're part of our strategic plan at the Land Bank, working with the City of Toledo and other partners. We believe that if clear title is achieved on those lots, if local control is retained over those lots, then they can be spaces that are more welcoming for the neighborhood. They can also be places for opportunity and investment as our neighborhoods are being rebuilt. So we're proud to work with the city and other partners to do that. This is an opportunity for our community. But moving on then from vacant lots to the built environment, what does the survey say about structures in our community? We found that 93 out of 100 parcels that have a structure on them are a home. So that's actually a smaller percentage of homes than every suburban community in Lucas County has. But I think that reality is clear. Toledo is mostly homes when you look at what is our built environment. Buildings, business building, institutional buildings. This building is an institutional building. Maybe where you work is a business building. They are a smaller portion of the overall parcel count, but they are a significant portion of the landmass in Toledo. I think if you recall that map I showed you just a few slides ago, that you could sort of see that. Parcels that we found that are dedicated to jobs, to industry, to health, or to government, they make up over 18 total square miles of the city, or about 20% of that landmass. So we have a lot of land in this community dedicated to the business world, even if we don't have necessarily a lot of individual parcels. The built environment in this town, just like every place, is pretty interesting. We have done a lot at the Land Bank with partners and others to make that built environment better. And in fact, we have a representative down on the bottom of your screen of every one of those kinds of uses. And every one of those properties that you're looking at is a property that the Land Bank helped to make better within a neighborhood. Anything from residential homes in Library Village or the Burroughs neighborhood, to the Juke Mode retail space in Uptown, to Nexus Healthcare, also in Uptown, or even mixed use buildings like at the corner of Collingwood and Delaware in the Old West End. That's just a taste of what we meant by those different categories up there. What's the state of vacancy? Or you could think about, what is the state of the unoccupied properties? The data here is always going to be imperfect, because we didn't go up and knock on people's doors and aggressively investigate whether anybody was staying there or not in that moment. It's hard to capture a definitive number here. But when we erred on the side of occupied. When we weren't sure in the survey, our surveyors were trained to say that the property was occupied. That means that very obviously, at least 4% of all of those buildings in Toledo are vacant, are unoccupied. That's a good baseline guess. The city of Toledo just recently completed a 10-year housing action plan. And in that action plan, that plan suggests that maybe 15% of all the properties in Toledo are vacant. That might be too high. I think the reality is that it's probably somewhere in the middle, but I'm not sure that there's anything less than 3,400 or so individual structures in Toledo that are empty. And maybe there's more than that, and maybe that changes. Regardless of exactly what the number is, this is far too many unoccupied structures for a community our size. It's better than in some places, but that's cold comfort to people that have to live next to one or live next to many within a community. And we have to continue to think carefully and work hard about what are the harms that vacant properties bring long-term to neighborhoods and what can we do to help tackle and solve that. That is the overall citywide data. Let's move then into the condition of structures. And before I do that, let me talk about a few of the things that we found across the board. Toledo has a very old housing stock. The average home in Toledo was built in 1940. So it's 80 years old. It would have fought well in World War II, and it would be, in an advanced age. That is the average age, which means that there's lots of properties that are much older than that, and not that many, honestly, that are much younger than that. I think lots of people say this often, like people say that they might not make them like they used to, but they also don't make them to last forever. So without maintenance, without investment, an 80-year-old anything, a 40-year-old anything starts to wear out, and you have to take care of it. Now I'm telling my age. So happily, what we found is that Toledo's housing stock is actually in pretty good shape given its age. But poverty, changes in use over time from what it was originally built into what it might be now, advances in technology, lessons learned about products that we used to use very aggressively that no longer make sense to use within our buildings. And the corollary to that, knowing more about what buildings do to our own health. And then lastly, climate change. They are all going to keep adding pressure to that very old housing stock. And so preservation of that housing, in addition to everything else, has to be a high priority. Some of the most difficult structure challenges that exist can be very obvious from the street, from standing on the sidewalk and just looking at the property. And in 2015 and in 2021, we looked at 6 exterior issues that we use to help judge the stability of a structure. Here's the good news. In 2015, when we looked at those issues and added every single problem that we found up, we found 49,000 total problems. Sometimes one house that needed a roof to be replaced, or another house that had fire damage and peeling paint and a couple other problems. But when you added all that up, there were 49,000 problems in 2015. When you add up what we found last summer, that's only 27,000 total problems. So that is a big improvement. It's still 27,000 problems. So it's still a lot of problems. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. We are doing better than we were. We are not doing well yet. And we have to put attention toward that. Chipping paint, failing roofs, boarded openings, collapse of the structure, fire, they're all bad news. I hope you don't have to deal with any of them yourself. Or if you do, then you're working on that, because those are bad news. If you're living in a building with 1 or 2 of those issues, you are it's having an impact on your quality of life. It's a problem. And when all of those issues are present, and certainly we found buildings where all of those issues are present, then we're talking about starting over maybe and doing something different. That building may not be able to last. Everyone here, particularly the leaders that are here, people who do this work as practitioners, people who fund this work, we can't be satisfied until we're much better than what we found here today. And I'm not sure that the economy all by itself is going to fix all these issues just because we did a little better over the last 5 years than we would have guessed. We're going to have to be more intentional about this kind of investment in order to meet and deal with this challenge. There's two of these in particular that we wanted to tease out a little bit more and talk about. The first is peeling paint or missing siding. 1 in 9 homes in Toledo suffers from this problem today. We've got two different kinds of problem within this. When we trained our surveyors, we asked them to try to distinguish between a minor issue at the property. Maybe there's a little peeling paint on the soffits or the fascia high up at the roof line that needs attention, but is not the worst of the worst. That's where you might see properties there under the minor category. But there were also properties where the whole outside was flaking, chipping, and peeling paint, and it needed to be fully repainted or it needed to be sided to deal with that. And that's what you see then in the category below of significant. Happily, most of the time when we found this problem, it was of the minor category, which is good because it's probably much easier and less expensive to have to address. But the longer we go without addressing it, the more likely it's going to move down into that significant category. 2,341 buildings with a significant peeling paint problem is quite bad. And if someone is living in one of those buildings, it is creating a major lead paint poisoning risk all by itself, because there is almost nothing in our community that is built and not covered in lead paint from the past. And so when it starts to peel and when it starts to flake and when it starts to chip, it's creating an issue. It's also creating a real eyesore. So maybe you're not worried about lead paint poisoning, although I would worry about your humanity if you aren't. But maybe you just don't like looking at ugly buildings. Well, either way, this is a reason for us to put some attention toward this. It's an expensive problem. It's easy to stand up here and say, gosh, we should do something about that. And not necessarily pull out a big wad of cash and start figuring it out. But we have some tools in place already. The lead safe rental registry is a tool that's in place. It's going to take more than just legal tools, though, to solve a challenge at this scale in terms of actual investment in people's properties. We also looked, obviously, at roofs, one of the most important factors of any building. Water can thoroughly wreck a structure. Water, once it's inside, can grow mold or other airborne issues that can cause serious breathing issues, that can cause asthma or exacerbate an already underlying condition. And a good functional roof with, by the way, proper gutters and downspouts is a good way to keep this kind of problem from happening. So we trained our surveyors on at least a half a dozen different kinds of roofing materials that exist in Toledo. Everything from the classic 3-tab shingle to dimensional shingles to Spanish tile to asbestos tile. You know, we got everything in this town. They're not all bad automatically just because I use scary words like asbestos, but if they're not good, no matter what they are, if they're not maintained. But we helped the surveyors and they helped us distinguish between properties that needed to be replaced based on the age or the condition of that, and also roofs that they found that were so far gone that they were clearly open to the elements, that it was raining on today, a day like today, inside the property. That was 9,000 structures, mostly homes, that need a roof replacement right now. 55% of that were actually landlord-owned, tenant-occupied properties. So attention in that category is probably worthwhile. The 400 or so that you see on here that are open to the elements, they're probably not going to make it as buildings. They might be what we talk about a little bit later when we talk about other things. Yesterday, we were with the City of Toledo and Maumee Valley Habitat for Humanity. They were celebrating their 300th roof replacement. And Habitat for Humanity's goal is to at least double that amount of work over the next few years. And the City of Toledo is also working very hard to create a roofing replacement program. That is all wonderful. We need more of it. We need a lot more, because that effort will help a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of people that still need that help afterwards. So working together, knowing where these properties are, and that's one of the things that the survey helps us to do, is a first step in order to actually solve those issues. Roofs and peeling paint, big issues. You could see that we also looked at fire damage. We looked at boarded openings. We looked at collapse on the porch or collapse in the actual foundation itself. We're not going to get into those. I think you understand. There were less of those. They're all pretty bad. And those need help. But when we did this survey in 2015, this is where we stopped collecting data. We looked at the city as a whole in terms of what was there. We looked at the conditions and structures. But having talked with the city and other partners before we implemented this survey, we thought this was an opportunity to do a little bit better. And that's where we added a few neighborhood conditions that I'm not sure that really have ever been comprehensively looked at in this community that contribute to and make neighborhoods just as good as the buildings and the vacant land and the investment that's there. So we're going to look at each of those here, the first being trees. The USDA, who probably thinks a lot about this, suggests that in a Midwestern climate like Toledo has, a city like Toledo should have about 35 to 40% of its land mass as tree cover. That's what they say. I'm not sure that, my guess is that's probably a minimum. That's a floor. That's a good start. Because if you're in a neighborhood that has a lot of trees, it's probably way above 35 to 40%, but that's a good start. Why do trees matter? I'm not sure that this is intuitive. In fact, we talked with some folks in the media over the last couple of days who had never really thought about this question. And I'm not sure everybody has really thought about this question. Why would trees matter to a neighborhood? Trees do a lot. They remove pollutants from the air. They slow down cars that are driving by them, so they make a neighborhood calmer. They make neighborhoods cooler. And human beings are not as fun when you're real hot as when you're a little cooler. That's just our nature. They also just add beauty and peace. Yes, they require you to rake leaves. Yes, that's a bummer. But that's maybe a small price to pay for the kind of things that they add. All the research shows that a neighborhood with lots of trees is a healthier, happier, more economically prosperous place than a neighborhood without trees. And trees are not something that you can't get if you don't work at it. It's possible to do it. So when you look at the city of Toledo, and I'm going to show you a map in just a second, we have work to do on tree cover. This is the average. So when you take it on average, about 30% of all the properties in Toledo have a tree that's alive in front of them. There's a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 or so that have a tree in front of them. It's not alive anymore. Maybe that's a first place to work on, just to kind of clean those up and maybe put something new there. But there's a lot of properties that don't have a tree. Are we going to get to 100% tree cover in this community? No. And I'm not sure that that's a realistic goal or a needed goal, but we can do better. And here is just a taste of how that actually distributes. So this is a map of that urban tree cover. When you see a blue dot on this map, that is because we found a present and alive tree in front of that property. And when you don't, there's no tree there. Now there's no tree there, and you can try to piece together, and I'm going to try to help you with this. I don't have a clicker, but here's what I'm going to do. You see where it says Ottawa Hills? Find it with your eyes. Great. Now look to the left, right? To the left, to the right. Also my right, so I'm not sure why I don't know my left and right. To the right of Ottawa Hills on that map is the Old Orchard neighborhood in Toledo. Old Orchard has a very substantial, very healthy tree cover. And you can actually physically see that on the map because that entire neighborhood is sort of lit up in blue. And Old Orchard is a very successful neighborhood. It's a very healthy neighborhood. It's an economically prosperous neighborhood. Contrast that with coming right out of downtown, right from where we are, say the Junction neighborhood that is right there on the other side, on the west side of I-75. It's harder to see blue in the Junction neighborhood. The Old Orchard neighborhood and the Junction neighborhood are designed exactly the same. They are a grid layout where at one point in the Junction neighborhood and continues to be in the Old Orchard neighborhood, houses were on every single parcel. The difference is that the trees are gone along with lots else in the Junction neighborhood. And that's just one place out of many where we're not meeting the community's needs and when we think about tree cover, and we could do better. And the built environment is helpful there to do that. It's not true in every part of the city because some parts of Toledo were annexed from a township in the past. And their built environment was not laid out like an old school grid with sidewalks, but trees there a little bit harder. So you can see some major gaps on this map, particularly in the Southwest, particularly in the Northwest. Those are places that look different than the old Toledo that we are in and that you can come out of right now. And so trees are different there, and there are parts of Toledo that are much more industrial. Trees are different there, but we have a lot of opportunity to help bring trees back to our neighborhoods. And now we know exactly where to find them and where to go. Sidewalks is another thing that makes a neighborhood a lot more successful. Most of Toledo's neighborhoods were built with a sidewalk in front of the property. Sidewalks help with all kinds of mobility, not the least of which is mobility for people with disabilities who live in every one of our neighborhoods. But sidewalks also create opportunities for neighborhood encounters. My husband and I talked to a lady that I still don't know her name, and maybe that's just how it is always going to be, that is walking her dog when we're walking around the neighborhood every night and we say hi, and that's the thing. You know, that is neighborly stuff. We would never see her if we weren't both on the sidewalk at that same moment. And that's how that goes. Neighborhoods also create easy, free opportunities for exercise, and they create endless opportunities for chalk art, which I think our surveyors also found from time to time when they were out there. In Toledo, where a sidewalk is built, for the most part, things are going well. You can see here that where a sidewalk exists, 60% of the whole city, it's functional, which means it's pretty level, it's pretty passable, it's not damaged, it's not missing. But we have some challenges and some opportunities that we can focus on. First, about a quarter of the city doesn't have a sidewalk at all. Stephanie and I were with Habitat for Humanity yesterday. We were at a property over in the Jackman Park neighborhood. Great neighborhood, no sidewalks. Maybe they should have sidewalks. Maybe that's an opportunity because we went one block over and then there were sidewalks again. So lots of places that are doing well or maybe need some help, but they don't have sidewalks at all. And that could be an opportunity in and of itself. There's also lots of properties where the sidewalk is damaged. Lots of damage from those trees that I just told you we needed more of. But opportunities there. You don't have to take away the tree in order to fix the sidewalk, but that tree might have pulled it up and we need to kind of make sure that it's passable for folks. We did the math. The average sidewalk in an average property in Toledo is about 250 square feet. So if you had to replace the whole one and you had to do it for all 18,000 of these properties, it's only 4.7 million square feet of concrete. So, you know, I mean, I don't know, that can't be a lot. That's probably a lot of work. I feel bad for the folks here in the center at Urban Beautification who are like, oh, great, that's a lot. But we don't have to do it all at once. We should now have a better sense of where to tackle it and some opportunities maybe to think more comprehensively about that investment, not piecemeal, because now someone can look at a map and see exactly how much of a neighborhood needs it all in one fell swoop. Here is a map of sidewalks. So you can see, again, you look up where Jeep is, there aren't as many sidewalks up there. I think that makes sense to us. Not a lot of people walking around up in that industrial corridor. And then if you look to the southwest or look to the northwest, neighborhoods that were never built with sidewalks. And that's where a lot of that yellow is, where it says no sidewalk. But you can also see some of those parcels distorted a bit, but you can see a lot of little red dots peppering out throughout neighborhoods, more than obviously we have, just to make sure that those sidewalks are in a condition that that people in the neighborhood can use them. It's funny, I'm not sure that everybody loves sidewalks, but that's okay. Maybe not every single property in this community will have a sidewalk in front of it, but there's probably lots of places where people would want it, or would at least want it to be fixed, and there's opportunities to get that done. Okay, that's where the survey ended. That's what happened when one of our surveyors stood in front of our property. Those are all the questions that they thought about. Here's where we have now taken some time to analyze those results and think about the community that we have and opportunities that we want to work on. Just now, we've updated our website at lucascountylandbank.org to be able to see all of this data. So you can see and play with and use those maps I just showed you. They're posted on our website. They're free for everybody. The first thing that you should do if you live in the city of Toledo is go look up your own property and make sure we didn't get it wrong. And if we did get it wrong, and I'm saying this to the people that were recording that might watch this later on the Zoom, everybody can reach out to us and say, you know what, I actually painted my house and you missed that. Or I doubt anybody will say this, but you said I had a great roof, but I actually have a hole in the back of it. You know, I don't think we're going to get many of those. But if you feel like we could do better, then you can not only use this data and access this information, but you can communicate with us about it. If you're a researcher, a practitioner, someone who wants to actually make it work on the ground, a GIS planner, you can reach out to us and we will give you the core raw data so that you can make it available to you in all the ways that you can think about. And that's for everybody in the whole community. This is free information. This is a public service, and we hope people use it. There's no reason to do it unless people use it. In 2015, we asked the people that did that survey to look at the conditions of the property, and then when they were finished, to give the property a grade. A's for properties that were in the best condition, all the way down to F's for properties that were in the worst condition that probably needed to be demolished. Like anything people do, those grades were often a little subjective, sometimes a little too subjective. And so when we thought about doing this for 2021, we wanted to flip the script a little bit. We wanted to make sure that there weren't such inconsistencies from that. And so what we asked the surveyors to do was look for those exterior conditions, but not give the property their own grade. We used the conditions that they found to calculate a grade based on objective criteria. So every house that we found that had a roof that was ready to be replaced went from an A to a C automatically, because that's a major issue. If that's all we found, that's where they stopped. They were a C. If we found more, they kept going down. If we found none of those issues on the outside, may not be a perfect house, nothing is a perfect house or a perfect building, but they automatically got an A. Everybody started it at an A, and then we used conditions to work down from that. And so that information, grading here, not perfect. It's actually better, I think, in planning, for planning purposes, to focus on some of those problems that we saw and directly invested them. But the grades do help to tell a little bit of a story. When we compare them, a couple things stand out. First, if you look with your eyes on the A's and B's in both 2015 and 2021, and you add them up, it's the exact same number of A's and B's. There are more A's in 2021 than there were in 2015. Is that because things are a little bit better? Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Is that because sometimes people were a little harsher on a property than it needed to be, and so they gave it a B when it probably deserved an A? Yeah, I'm sure that's true as well. But about 89% of all the buildings in Toledo got an A or a B. That should make us feel good. Because gosh, can you imagine if it was like 50%, the number of properties that we would have to be tackling? That would be a lot harder. But here's what was intriguing to us that we needed to better analyze. When you look at the C's, D's, and F's in 2015 and the C's, D's, and F's in 2021, it's exactly the same proportion. And I think I mentioned to you before that we at the land bank, working with other partners, did a lot of structure demolition over the last 6 years. So properties that got a D or an F in 2015, in most cases, those properties were demolished. They're vacant lots now. They never got a grade in this system. So they're no longer on this map. So how did we find the same number of C's, D's, and F's today as 5 years ago if we eliminated a lot of buildings that were in that worst category? I think one of the worries that we have is that many of the C's in 2015, the properties with at least one or a little bit more serious issues, they didn't all get the help that they needed as a community, and they slid down that path. So C's in 2015, without intervention, are many of the D's and F's that we found in 2021. And many of the D's and F's are properties that are no longer salvageable, that we hope no one is living in, but sadly, and we'll talk about this in a second, too many people in fact are living in. And we still have a lot of C's from 2021, which means maybe some of those B's from 2015 are also sliding down. Now, absolutely it goes the other way, and absolutely that matters. But if we were meeting these challenges a little bit better as a community, we would probably see a little bit better in those numbers. So there is good news here. First, many of those worst properties from 2015 are now vacant lots. That blighted building is gone, and neighborhoods are happy about that. Second, across the board, like I said before, all of the exterior issues that we found in 2015, they're better across the board. fewer roofs that need attention, fewer peeling paint properties, fewer fire damage properties across the board. But that change, that lack of change in the structure conditions is somewhat of a tough lesson about how much intervention is needed so that we do not repeat this cycle again and again as a community, where we tackle the worst of the worst today and then meet a new set of worst and the worst just a few years down the road. How do we do that? For the land bank, one of the things that we put a real focus on is helping to turn vacant and abandoned buildings back to productive use. And you can think about it in two ways. There are lots of buildings like that building up in Durango that you can see on the top in the Burroughs neighborhood that were not in the worst of shape. In fact, we found about 1,700 unoccupied houses and commercial buildings that only received a C or better. So maybe they got a C because they have one major issue, or maybe they got a B because they had a few minor issues, but they're not in terrible shape. Those are opportunities either through receivership or through tax foreclosure or through some other means to take control, find individuals who want to invest in them ourselves, invest them as Habitat for Humanity, invest in them as the city of Toledo, and bring them back to productive use, create home ownership opportunities, create life back in that neighborhood. And we have done a lot of that, and partners have done a lot of that. And there is obviously a lot more that we can do. There are also, sadly, like I said, too many properties, about 1,400 or so, that are likely demolition candidates. They're too far gone. Not every single one of those there, but that's every property that we found that no one was living in that got a D or F in that grade. Those, they have major conditions. Absolutely, you can save a property that's a D or F. We did it in 2020 in the Old West End. We saved a property that got an F in 2015. It was a very expensive save. It was an important save. It's possible. It's harder to scale fixing every F property and find the resources for that than it is to find the resources to fix the C properties, because they need less attention. And so being swifter about that is important. That's one of the ways that we think at the land bank we can make a difference. But there's lots of other ways that are maybe outside of our core mission that other community development partners can also focus on this work. This is the worst slide I have. Not because of Vicki. This is Miss Vicki Smith in the Junction neighborhood. She's wonderful. Do not attribute the bad news on this slide to Miss Vicki. She is just an example of people who live in our community. But we found 4,000 homes that got a C or worse that someone is living in right now. 4,000. This is the challenge that we're talking about as properties potentially slide down and get worse over time. Remember, you couldn't get a C unless you had a roof that was ready to be replaced today, or fire damage, or a collapsing foundation, or significant peeling paint. You started there when you had those issues. Those are not good things. People living in a place like that are in a tough place. They're in a place that none of us in this room would choose to live in. I hope none of us in this room are forced to have to live in a situation like that. Because I don't know that the people that are in those situations, I'm not sure they're choosing it either. But unless we make investments and find ways as a community to confront this reality, we are going to continue to struggle. And it matters because these people's lives matter. And if we say that people's lives matter, we have to make the investments to make that a reality. It can't be true that it's just going to happen on its own. It's not going to happen on its own. We have to be intentional about it. Okay, that was my lecture. That's the, as if I could be a pastor, but there you go. That's not. All right. All right. Here's the last thing. This is, I think, more exciting. You don't probably need a big dramatic slide to tell you that, but here we have one. I hope you all know that neighborhoods, healthy neighborhoods, are what make a community like Toledo successful. And Toledo has 82 very diverse, very captivating neighborhoods. And for the first time, we have made the effort to not just think about the city as a whole, but analyze every single one of those 82 neighborhoods and make that information available for the community. So if you got this invitation, you were promised that you were going to get a gift on the way out. This is your gift. This booklet is yours for free when you walk out the door. You can see it up here. not only does it tell you everything that we just talked about in terms of the citywide information, but you can open it up to any of these pages in the back, to any part of the city, the west side, the north side, the south side, or the southwest side, and you can see information about every single neighborhood in specific. Because I think what we found and what we learned from 2015 is that people are interested in what's happening at the city, particularly if you're an elected official or you're a leader in this community. But if you're a resident, you care first about where you are. And then maybe you'll go and think about where your mother grew up or where your friends live or something else. But you want to know about your place. And we don't have enough energy or time to be able to meet with every single person and talk about their place. So this is the next best alternative. Here's a little taste of what it looks like for each neighborhood. We couldn't pick a neighborhood as a demonstration because we would offend 81 other people who don't live in that neighborhood. But every neighborhood in this booklet is organized this way, where you can see in that blue box there on the bottom, there will actually be a map of the neighborhood with its boundaries. You will be able to see how many properties in that neighborhood have opportunities for help and assistance. What is the current value? What is the relative stability? You will see, and this is just shameless plugging on our part since we paid for this, how many properties we have helped in that neighborhood, whether it's a lot or a little. You'll see the overall character of the neighborhood in terms of what's there and when things were built and what people are like there and how much owner occupancy is. It's really interesting information. So we hope that you'll grab this. We hope that you'll tell your friends. If there's people here tonight who knew someone wanted to be here and couldn't make it, we have enough of these books that if people want to come by our office, you can pick one up for free. It's also available on our website. You can go home and share it with people and download it tonight, but it's more fun to some degree to hold this in your hand. So if you know about people, we have plenty of these and folks should come and take them because we hope that people use them. In addition to those neighborhood profiles and that citywide data, we also featured a story about 6 different people in each of those regions of the city that we helped over the course of our work. And so you can hear them and see them talk about a project in their neighborhood and what that meant to them as just a taste of what our neighborhoods are truly like and how great the people of the city of Toledo are. Sonia, I told you you were in this presentation. At the start, I told you that what gets measured gets dealt with. That's easy to say, that is harder to do. In the real world that we all live in, with fewer resources that we would hope for, dealing with the challenges and the opportunities that we found in this survey is not going to be that easy. But we don't have to deal with them all at once. We do have to deal with them. We have to make the effort because our community is counting us in all the ways that matter. And thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. We're going a little bit longer than we thought, but maybe we started a little bit late. We have time for questions if there are any questions that folks have about this. Julia has a microphone, Shantae has a microphone. So put your hand up and we'll do a few questions before we close with the mayor. Stephanie. Is the light on, Montrese? You want to just shout it? I'll repeat it, Montrese.
Hi, my name is Montrese Terry. I represent Junction neighborhood, actually, but also the chair of Reinvest Toledo. So it's okay. Great job, David, and the land bank, city of Toledo. This is progress. I want to really say that here with the information shared. You mentioned a number of things that I would like for us to really consider and to possibly have feedback. When we talk about priority, who makes the decision on priorities? You put a slide up that had the vacant lot and house with a nice space. In many of our neighborhoods, just like the Junction neighborhoods, we see a number of vacant lots. How can we, and who makes the decision to prioritize what areas of the city gets done first? And I know that's a collective question, but that's a practical piece in terms of getting and addressing those issues. That's the first question. Second question is, on average, and they go to moderate, or a high-risk neighborhood, it is on average 6 to 8 times to get someone to respond to those issues with Engage Toledo and the land bank. How can we improve those responses? Because it goes from no response to being 30 days to being addressed before someone responds in those low to moderate and high risk neighborhoods. What are some of the ways that we're discussing how to address those needs immediately? Thank you so much. And then the final point of that is how can we assure in this room there's a representation of the Junction community. We have on the land bank our Vice President Shante, our former Chief of Fire and Rescue, and now Safety Director, Chief Berger, Simon, Taylor Garden, and there's others. So there's a representation of the Junction community, as you alluded to. How can we assure residents and neighbors that if they're not getting their questions or comments to be addressed? For example, on Belmont and Avenue, there are craters, not potholes, craters. And there have been residents addressing those issues at least 3 to 4 times with no response. How can we improve that so that neighbors know that we are taking their concerns very seriously? Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, thanks, Montrese. Yeah, appreciate it here. I think one of the things that's an easy answer first is that although some of the things that you brought up are not things that we have any control over at the land bank directly, there's potholes, one example. there are people in this room that do have some control over that, and I think they heard what you said. So even though I don't feel like I need to kind of address something that we don't have a lot of control over the land bank, I know that people in this room heard what you said. I think on the question, let me go back to prioritizing vacant land, and I think part of what you were talking about is prioritizing maintenance. The land bank in the city of Toledo and others have been in a dialogue for a while, and I think happily, there is an understanding now that may not have always existed. And it's right now the start of a mowing season. So it's right now the start where this is easy to say, and you'll have to make sure that people actually are meeting it out in the community. But it wasn't always the case that every property that no one was taking care of was automatically going to get taken care of. It wasn't always the case that a lot that was abandoned, that no one was cutting the grass on, the person who owns it is not in Ohio, not in the United States, maybe. I think as a community, we're just hoping they would take care of it. And if they didn't, we would do our best. I think there's a new understanding where that's not enough, that the minimum when a property is in that kind of condition is that the public, unfortunately, is forced to take care of it. But that has to happen because it matters to the people that live next door. It matters to the people that live on the block. And they are the people that we have to think about, not be mad that someone else is not meeting their responsibilities, but also not just take care of it long-term, but take control of it in a way that can make it an opportunity for investment in that neighborhood. Put it back in the hands of the people that live there. So that you're going to have to see how that goes. But I do think that there is a new understanding and a new recognition that that is the kind of thing that has to happen. Because if we don't do that, then we get what we've seen in the past, which is way too many lots that look like the one that I showed you that might have in fact been a property that you have seen in the past. So that's where I think priority comes on that factor. And I think that's important. And then the only other thing I'll say in terms of what you brought up is that we never thought that this meeting tonight was the only time that we would ever share this information and we're done. We are welcomed and willing. Not only have we made all of this completely available on our website, but anybody who's here who thinks that they know of a group or an organized set of residents or someone who wants to hear this presentation, who wants to better understand their neighborhood, that is part of what we're committed to doing as we go forward. So tonight is not the only time that people here. I'm glad that we have a good representation of a few neighborhoods, but we've got a lot of neighborhoods and not everybody's here. And so we will continue to work at that. Other questions?
Yeah, it works out. So I'll say that. So I'm from the Burns neighborhood here with Sarah. She's my wife, also from Burns neighborhood. The land bank came to us, I think it was 2015, I don't know. It's COVID time, doesn't matter anymore. But anyway, so first we want to say thank you to the land bank for coming to us But what I wanted to say was, one of the reasons the land bank helped in our neighborhood was that there was a committed group of individuals, much like other neighborhoods around this room, where there are people willing to step up and take care of some of those properties. But the problem is, there's really no way for citizens to feel comfortable going on to either city-owned vacant lots or privately owned vacant lots that the city could be taking care of to mow the grass. Like, I can go from the triangle across the street to Club Kingdom to mow the grass, but it was raided for guns and drugs. Am I gonna get in trouble with whoever owned it? Am I gonna get in trouble with the city for trespassing, anything like that? So I really asked the city and the land bank to work together to maybe deputize or let neighborhood organizations know when and how we can go do it ourselves. If it's a liability thing, we can sign waivers, I'm sure, but really it's nothing to cut some grass. We waited 2 years for some grass to get cut. We could have done it if we felt comfortable. So could there be a way for the land bank or the city to make us feel comfortable?
Thanks, Robert. That's a good point, and I think we should continue to find ways to do that, because we're not going to, there's too much work in this community to rely on just a few people to do it. So neighbors who are ready to step up to do that, yeah, I think we continue to talk and find ways. There may be actually some ways that are already in place. Maybe it's just a matter of making sure that people know about them and working through that.
As far from a land-based perspective, if there is a land bank on property that any community member would like to lease or license, that is an opportunity that you could work with us. We can use the rights on properties. A lot of times they will take better care of the properties in the county. So I would encourage any community member, if there is a land bank on property, or even now city of Toledo property, I got you. We're working on a memorandum of understanding where we're actually able to license the city properties as well.
All right, one more question, maybe, Garrett. Grab your mic, because you're all being recorded.
I just wanted to comment that I know that numerous lots east of the there are continuous model, and I'm willing to scope those out and make sure that some of the city data they are being done and report back to the city, because I report lots that are already over 5 and they're closed because they're on continuous. Somebody's being paid for that and they don't want to know that.
Mhm.
I just want to throw that out because I don't want that happening.
Yep.
And so I can take care of the piece. If I have a list of what's on, I can report back to them.
That's it.
I'm willing to put it like to make sure that.
That's a very generous offer.
I really appreciate all the information.
Yeah, thank you for being here. There's a few folks that are sitting right in front of you that you might just want to chat with. They may be able to let you help them with that. So not to pick on them, but like, that's who you should talk to. All right, Roz, and then we will wrap up.
David, thank you so much for this data. I'm Ross Clemens, I represent the Department of Housing and Community Development. This is the kind of data that we need to target our work. I just want to say to this audience, we talked about roof repair in the city. We attended an event yesterday where Habitat has repaired 300 roofs over the last, I think it's 5 years. We took legislation to council yesterday to launch a roof program where we hope to double that amount in the next 3 years. But when you look at the number of roofs that we need to repair or replace, that is a drop in the bucket. This city does its housing and community development work with federal money. We only spend 3% of our money on housing and community development. To tackle this work, we need to scale it. We need to invest in this. And this is the kind of data that I think we need to take to our council, take to our leaders, because we've got to invest in this work. We want to coordinate. We can't just continue to rely on federal dollars. So again, it helps, this data helps us with the money that we have, a little bit of money that we have to target our work. I think you provided us with a list of those homes that need replacement. So we're gonna start with those homes. We're not gonna do an application process. We're gonna use your data and to help us to do our work. But I want to hone in on this message. We need the resources. We need the resources to scale this work.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well said, very, very well said. And I think it's exactly what we're all saying here tonight. So thank you all for this attention. Now let me invite up, well, we know him as the vice chair of our board, but you know him as the mayor of the city of Toledo, Wade Kapszukiewicz.
Before I was the mayor, I was the county treasurer, not nearly as excellent as our current county treasurer. But I happened to be the county treasurer at about the time that David and I and some others went down to Columbus and actually changed the state law needed to create land banks. Ohio wasn't allowed to have land banks before, was it 2009 or 2010, whatever the year was. So we did, and David has been doing this work longer than anyone else. And I think he and his team deserve an additional round of applause for what they have done. When we began, and I remember having this conversation, even if David doesn't. I remember assuming that information like what we just saw existed somewhere, that there was some file cabinet somewhere, maybe in the mayor's office, maybe in the county commissioners, or who knows, somewhere, someone had this data. Eventually we would find it, we'd bump into the right council person, or maybe Marcy would show us where it was. And then at some point we just said to ourselves, that data just doesn't exist. We'll have to go out and do it ourselves. And that was the 2015 survey, which was our first attempt to gather this data. And it was a wonderful attempt, and in 2015 came up with a lot of good stuff. But what this is so far advanced to even what we were able to do in 2015. It's just astounding. I'm having a hard time summarizing how overwhelmed I am and awestruck by what we just heard. I have in my office a shelf where only the most important documents go. I got filings as notes here and things and napkins and ideas everywhere. But then there's a shelf where the truly important stuff goes. There's about 5 or 6, last couple budgets, things like, in this report. I got this report last week and it went on the super important shelf in my system, because that's how I view this and this work. This data is so invaluable. Data like this literally didn't exist 10 years ago. 6, 7 years ago, they kind of did a crude attempt, and I only call it crude because I remember I was out there saying, well, how does this app work? I don't know, it's an F, let's move, This is so much better and so much more thoughtful, and the decisions that have to be made in our city depend on this. There's never been anything like this that has been created. The story contained here, in a lot of ways, is the story of Toledo. We're making a lot of progress, but we have a long way to go. Those were themes I touched on in my State of the City speech last week. Boy, in so many categories, but we're doing so much better than we had been on our budget, but we're not where we need to be yet. We've done some important things on public safety, but geez, we're not where we need to be. We're repaving so many more roads than we ever had before, but oh my gosh, we got potholes and craters in some parts of our city. On issue after issue after issue, we have made so much progress, but we still have so much work to do. And that's what I heard from this presentation. It may have been glossed, maybe it was glossed over, or maybe I was glossing over. But one of the points I want to make is when they did this in 2015, they found about 50,000, what do you call them, problems. Problems, 50,000? Okay, now they went through and did, frankly, I think a more thorough review and found 26,000 problems. Is it 26 or 28 or 29? I'm going to stop because the number of problems keep increasing. But the point is, geez, in 6 or 7 years, that's about half the problems. That is real progress, but it's still 29,000 problems. It is exciting in one way that the letter grades that we've given to the housing stock is roughly the same as it was 7 years ago. That's encouraging. I think the perception is that it's worse. Geez, but when you bake into the cake the fact that the worst properties were demolished and aren't even being counted, that means, as David said, that there are properties that were B minuses and Cs that became Ds and Fs. You know, that's a problem. So we could look at this and be encouraged that things might be a little better than we thought, and we sure as heck had made progress. Or we could use this as a moment to say, despite the progress that's been made, we got a lot more to do. We wouldn't be able to even begin to approach these problems without this roadmap. I know one thing, and I guess I'll end with this. There are no bad neighborhoods in Toledo. And I'll say that again. There are no bad neighborhoods in Toledo. And you know why? Because the people of Toledo are good. Toledoans are good people. And because of their goodness, every neighborhood in Toledo is a good neighborhood. What this report should do isn't point out the 82 neighborhoods. This isn't a comparison. Oh, this is a good neighborhood. This is a bad. This is a roadmap of opportunities. That's what this is. This isn't a comparison between what we think is good and bad. No, we need more roofs fixed in this neighborhood and that one, and there's not enough trees here and there. Okay. It's a roadmap that presents us opportunities for how we can take what we have and make it even better. That's how I look at it. I encourage all of you to look at it the same way, and I'm just so sincerely thankful to the Land Bank and the team for producing such a vital report, so vital that it now rests on the important shelf in my office. So thank you, and let's all do the work that needs to be done, understanding that this report gives us a path. It gives us a path, and it shows us opportunities where we can build on our successes and improve areas where we've been less successful. So with that, am I the last person to speak? Now we're officially done. So thank you.
As you leave, Devana and Julia are out there. They will give you a book. Please take a book. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, just pulled it up. I just pulled it up.
Yeah, I texted you.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good, thorough story. And you got Channel 13 and Channel 24 here also. So good. Okay.
Well, great.